Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, March 24th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. San Diego health officials are reporting 2 new cases of a potentially more infectious strain of the virus called the Brazilian variant. One case is among a resident, while the other person does not live here. This as our daily case count remains low. But with spring break upon us, KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says that could be changing.
Even just looking from month to month, we are seeing an increase of passengers.
Travel is up nationwide, and the trend is hitting the San Diego International Airport too. This past Sunday, officials say they saw their busiest flying day since the pandemic was first declared more than a year ago.
In March, there's several different spring breaks happening, so traditionally a popular time to travel.
San Diego International's traffic was down 95% last April compared to 2019, but they're making gains. Right now, it's down around 60% compared to this time 2 years ago. And so is the hotel industry. After averaging around 16,000 daily bookings countywide at the beginning of the year, numbers have steadily increased to now around 50,000 daily bookings. It's an improvement, but not comparable to pre-pandemic numbers during this time. While we're not seeing some huge spring break crowds at places like here at Mission Beach, a lot of our local kids are still yet to go on spring break. But local businesses in this area tell me they're starting to see an uptick in customers.
We are seeing some like tourists from Arizona, like our typical tourists, but it's honestly dropped a lot significantly.
Belmont Park is a staple in Mission Beach for tourists and locals. The park's public relations manager, Daniela Bauer, says spring break is typically their second busiest time of the year.
In previous years, it would be packed. This year, I don't think it's going to be quite that much.
They are expecting an increase over the next few weeks, and because we're now in the state's red reopening tier, amusement parks and baseball stadiums can reopen on April 1st. Belmont Park is doing just that, and preparations are underway to reopen all of the rides here.
It's definitely a huge deal for us.
CDC health officials are still advising against traveling, warning of a potential surge in cases, especially if unvaccinated people are mixing.
If they, make that decision to travel again, do it responsibly. And at this point we're a year in. Folks know the individual steps and actions that we can all take.
Local officials say there are no quarantine restrictions for traveling county residents coming back, but Supervisor Nathan Fletcher says we're on a good trajectory and wants to stay there. In the next few weeks, we could potentially be seeing more restrictions relaxed. He's reminding those traveling of a statewide advisory.
Encouraging Californians to avoid non-essential travel more than 120 miles from someone's place of residence.
Fletcher says that advisory also recommends those traveling out of state to quarantine for 10 days when they return. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Vaccine eligibility recently expanded, and if you want to find out if it's your turn and where to get your shot, head to kpbs.org. Just go to our homepage and then click on the Vaccines tab to find clinic locations as well as links to make an appointment. San Diego Unified School District Superintendent Cindy Martin is President Biden's pick to be the Deputy Secretary of Education. Today, she was grilled by U.S. senators during her confirmation hearing. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong says both Martin's supporters and critics had their say.
Much of the questioning during Martin's 2-hour-long hearing centered around the pandemic's impact on school children. Responding to questions about whether she waited too long to reopen schools at San Diego Unified, she said she relied on local experts and local data.
Every decision that we made was rooted in safety being our strategy as the science was ever evolving. And as it evolved, we evolved in our implementation and our path forward.
The tone and tenor of the questioning were largely divided across partisan lines. She received praise from Democrats for her achievements at California's second largest district, particularly for her work with marginalized students.
Under her tenure, the district achieved the fastest reading growth in large urban districts nationwide and had the highest graduation rate of all big city districts in California last year.
Republican senators were more skeptical, especially in regards to her lack of experience in higher education. Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana questioned her about student loan forgiveness and was frustrated by the lack of a clear answer.
If confirmed, it's something I'd want to know more about and engage in the appropriate dialogues with the appropriate staff as it moves forward.
That sounds a little bit like a rehearsed answer. In fact, it sounds entirely like you were prepped for that. I guess what I want is the unprepped answer.
While Martin was being questioned on Capitol Hill, about a dozen parents and community leaders gathered in front of the district office to protest her nomination. In particular, they called her out for the disproportionate suspension and expulsion rates for black students. During the hearing, Martin did not address racial disparities in school discipline, but said she has seen success in addressing achievement gaps between black and white students in literacy and math skills.
When I started in 2013, our 8th graders were achieving at average across the country, looking at the NAEP scores amongst the big city districts. And then in 2019, we were first in the nation and in reading and second in the nation in math.
The senators have not yet set a date for Martin's confirmation vote. Meanwhile, she will finish the school year at San Diego Unified, and Area Superintendent Lamont Jackson will then lead San Diego Unified on an interim basis while it searches for Martin's permanent replacement. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
President Biden committed to reopening schools in his first 100 days in office. Now he's backing up that promise by opening up $81 billion in funding to schools across the country. That money is coming from the latest COVID relief package. The president made the announcement today during the National Safe School Reopening Summit, attended by representatives from districts across the country. Cajon Valley Union School District was among them to share their successes.
What we've realized throughout it all is that this has been a year for hope, a year for shifting our mindset with regards to how we approach our number one customer, our students, our families, and our community at large. We have to create relationships. We have to focus everything on the relationship. And the reality is that SEL, social emotional learning, cannot be embedded. It has to be the forefront of what you do. It has to be everything.
The district has been open for hybrid instruction for kindergarten through 8th grade since last fall. The plan is for all grades to return to pre-pandemic 5 days a week in-person learning on April 12th. Today, Governor Gavin Newsom announced his pick for the state's next Attorney General. Rob Bonta, an assembly member from the Bay Area, would be California's first Filipino Attorney General. Bonta has authored several bills focusing on criminal justice reform, including ending cash bail, phasing out private prisons, and expunging marijuana convictions. If confirmed by the state legislature, he says he would work to protect those facing the forces of hate and seek justice.
Now more than ever, we need leaders in government and leaders in law enforcement who will build bridges with communities that have been othered, that have been persecuted, that have been targeted. And if I have the honor of being confirmed as Attorney General, that will be one of my top priorities.
Bonta would replace Javier Becerra, who is now the Federal Health and Human Services Secretary. A demand to stop hate against members of the Asian American Pacific Islander community in San Diego County could soon become policy. And as KPBS reporter John Carroll tells us, it's up to all of us to see it through.
We are here today to stand and speak with one voice.
Chairman of San Diego County's Board of Supervisors, Nathan Fletcher, began a morning news conference with a clarion call for everyone to work together to stand against discrimination and the violence it breeds against members of the AAPI community. Kent Lee is on the board of the San Diego API Coalition.
I have been appalled, and I think all of us have been appalled at the incidents we've seen, not just in this last week in Atlanta, but also over the course of the last several months, over the course of the pandemic.
The murders in Atlanta, 8 people, 6 of them Asian women, gunned down while at work. And there are so many more incidents across this country, especially over the past year. Here in San Diego County, from the day the state went into the COVID lockdown through the end of last year, 42 incidents of discrimination reported against members of the AAPI community, more than half of those verbal, nearly 10% resulting in physical violence. And of course, those are just the ones that were reported.
Words have power. Words have power to uplift, and words have power to hurt.
Like everyone else at this morning's news conference outside the county administration building, Kieran Makapugai called on all San Diegans to step up, to not let racist comments pass without being challenged. And she voiced support for action that will come before the Board of Supervisors next month. Fletcher and Vice Chair Supervisor Nora Vargas are working with the AAPI community on the wording of a resolution and a new policy. Words that Makapugai says will turn into action.
These actions will inform policy. These actions will inform programs, practices, laws to give all of our communities the care and the compassion that we have been asking for long before this pandemic.
A crime against any community is a crime against all of us. It is unacceptable, and it must stop now.
Ellen Nash chairs San Diego's Human Relations Commission. She summed up her remarks saying, hate has no place in America's finest city. The resolution and proposal for changes in county policy will be taken up by the supervisors on April 6th. John Carroll, KPBS News.
As the community in Boulder, Colorado mourns the loss of 10 people shot at a supermarket there, nationwide many are calling once again for action on guns. Daryl Forges has more.
Suzanne Fountain.
She just would light up the room, and she was a bright light.
Trelana Bartkowiak.
Honestly, she was the most amazing person I've ever met in my life.
Ricky Olds.
She had dreams. She had ambitions. She was one of a kind.
A portrait painted by friends and families of some of the 10 people killed in a senseless act of violence that has devastated a community.
There's a hole in our family that won't be filled.
An investigation is underway into Monday's mass shooting at King Soopers in Boulder, Colorado.
This is going to take time, and we're going to see justice prevail.
The suspect, Ahmad Alyssa, is set to make his first court appearance Thursday as questions mount over the motive.
But I just don't know why he would choose this way to get his point across.
Renewed calls for action on guns are resonating from Colorado.
We have mass shooting after mass shooting, and Congress has failed to act.
To Washington, the Biden administration echoing the call.
If we really want something that is going to be lasting, we need to pass legislation.
While many Republicans argue stricter gun laws are not the solution.
With regard to the gun legislation over in the House, I don't think it would address this issue.
The mayor of Boulder says an assault weapons ban may have made a difference in his city.
I can say this, it wouldn't have hurt, and probably would have helped.
A city now home to growing memorials for the 10 community members lost to gun violence. In Boulder, Daryl Forges, KPBS News.
We've learned that up to 1,400 unaccompanied migrant children could be housed at the San Diego Convention Center. That's according to an email from the Office of Refugee Resettlement. The federal government asked the county to use the site, which has operated as a homeless shelter since the pandemic. It comes as thousands of people are arriving at the border and space is running out to safely house them. President Joe Biden has tapped Vice President Kamala Harris to lead the White House's immigration efforts. Harris says she will be working with numerous countries, including Mexico. She also repeated the administration's message that migrants should not travel to the U.S. now, and says the nation needs to address the main problems with migration while enforcing the law. The seat for the 79th Assembly District, which runs from Otay Ranch all the way up to La Mesa, is now vacant after Dr. Shirley Weber was confirmed as California Secretary of State. With early voting already underway, KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler looks at who is in the running.
The special election comes at a pivotal time for the heavily Democratic 79th District, when federal COVID recovery money will now flow through the state to communities that desperately need it. Akilah Weber is a doctor, La Mesa City Council member, and daughter of the woman she's now running to replace. She says she'll be up to the task of making sure these funds help a community that's hurting, because she's already working in government.
One of the things that is beneficial about being an elected official at this time is that I have already the relationships with the elected officials that actually govern these individual areas and these individual cities.
National City resident Leticia Munguia is a lifelong organizer in San Diego and has worked on behalf of a public employees union for the past 16 years. She thinks relationships at the community level will prove valuable to distributing much-needed resources immediately.
When I look at the short-term impact to small businesses, my approach is going to be being able to leverage public, federal, state resources to make sure that we provide immediate injection of relief to our small businesses where there's an opportunity to have them reopen their doors, that we're there to support them.
Aramik Glass-Blake is a criminal justice reform advocate whose previous run for public office was derailed by a cancer diagnosis. She wants to make sure that communities know how beneficial policies in both Washington and Sacramento are impacting them, and that they feel those impacts.
These communities never actually feel the policy changes. They never actually see the results of what was created for them to change and make their lives better. And I think we have to do a better job of really evaluating how we are implementing and building infrastructure to roll out these policies.
Two other candidates, middle school teacher Shane Parmalee and Republican Marco Contreras, are also running for the seat. Early voting began on March 8th, with the primary election concluding on April 6th. If no candidate wins a majority of votes, a runoff will be held on June 8th. Either way, the assembly member will have missed the bulk of an important legislative session and will need to get up to speed quickly. That's where Munguia believes she has an advantage, as already a veteran of what goes into deal-making in Sacramento.
I really feel that I'm prepared, I'm experienced, and I've been a champion for workers.
Weber says her immediate focus would be on helping improve public health through tackling long-standing social problems like school funding.
So when we talk about social determinants, we talk about things like closing the academic achievement gap, making sure that resources and funds are equitably distributed and money is able to be given to those who need more, so that schools, whatever school your child goes to, regardless of your zip code or the zip code of your home or the zip code of your school, that every child has an equal opportunity to create a healthy future.
Well, both Weber and Munguia have picked up coveted endorsements and financial support from local political leaders and labor organizations. Glass-Blake feels like her political outsider status will allow her to more directly serve the community.
I want to bypass all the politics within politics, because many times we, again, don't get that sustainable change because our politicians are bought and paid for.
Former Assembly member Dr. Shirley Weber passed a series of police reform bills, which won her accolades from across the country. Each candidate says they'll continue her work in their own way. For Dr. Akilah Weber, the protests from over the spring and the riot in her hometown of La Mesa reminded her that social justice issues in the district must be continually listened to and addressed at the state level.
What we saw in May and June, the actions, it was not due to a single incident. It was due to years of people not being heard. It was due to years of people feeling marginalized and treated differently.
3 of the 4 Democratic candidates will participate in a forum on Wednesday evening focusing on gun violence in the district, organized by San Diegans for Gun Violence Prevention. The forum begins at 6 p.m. Max Rivlin-Adler, KPBS News.
The signatures have been submitted, and in a few weeks, Californians will find out if the petition to recall Governor Gavin Newsom will get on the ballot. Brandy Cummings has more on what happens next.
A county-by-county breakdown gives a clearer picture of how some Californians feel about a gubernatorial recall. According to the Secretary of State, as of March 11th, more than 1.8 million signatures have been received statewide. So far, more than 1.4 million have been verified. Of those, more than 1.1 million are valid. The petition needs more than 1.4 million or 307,000 more valid signatures to qualify to get on a ballot. Last week was the deadline deadline to collect and submit signatures. However, there are still more than 380,000 signatures that have already been submitted, plus any that were submitted between March 11th and the 17th. All of those still need to be verified. Now take a look at this map. It shows where signatures were submitted, the data compiled by our partners at SF Gate. Amador County submitted the most signatures per registered voter at 16.5%. Sacramento County, 7.1%. Placer County, 14.2%. 10.9% in El Dorado County. KCRA3 political analyst Kevin Riggs says these numbers show the traditional political split in California between conservative and progressive.
I think it's probably no surprise that the red counties in California would have the highest percentage of support for the recall.
Do you believe that should it get on the ballot, he will be recalled?
I do think that he is relatively well situated to survive the recall at this point, especially compared to what happened in 2003 with Gray Davis. There are far more registered Democrats today in California than there was then.
In response to the recall, Gavin Newsom has launched an aggressive campaign that can raise an unlimited amount of money.
Because it is a ballot measure and it's not candidate centered, it means that he does not have to be governed by any kind of a fundraising limit.
But with the recall looming, Riggs says there's even more to keep an eye on.
One of the things that Gavin Newsom really has to watch for and worry about is if another prominent Democrat gets into the race to replace him.
Political insiders say voters should expect an election in October or November and be prepared to see dozens of names on the ballot.
That was Brandy Cummings reporting. A handful of Republican candidates have entered the race, including former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer, businessman John Cox, and former Congressman Doug Osee. California officials are bracing for a dry summer, but local water managers say there is enough water for the region. State water managers have cut their water projections in half from early predictions because of persistent dry conditions in the Sierra Nevada. The San Diego County Water Authority's Jeff Stevenson says the county doesn't rely too much on that water, and they predict a reliable local supply.
We have sufficient water supplies, whether it's a normal year, which means normal rainfall, a single dry year, or a period of 5 straight dry years. Under all those scenarios, we have more than sufficient water supplies to meet the needs of the region.
Stevenson credits local efforts to diversify water sources. The region only gets about 10% of its water from the State Water Project. The rest comes from the Colorado River, the Carlsbad Desalination Plant, and other local sources.
Much cooler air is on the way for Thursday, and we'll see showers and strong gusty winds. Precipitation will be on the light side. Up in the high mountains, above 6,000 feet, probably a couple inches of snow. And then that system pulls out, and for the weekend, we are looking dry, and it will be warmer. Here's a check on our weather for tonight. Temperatures dipping down to the mid-40s in Oceanside, low 50s in San Diego. 30s in Ramona and El Cajon at 43. Mount Laguna around 35. Now for Thursday, well, it's a familiar pattern. Another chilly trough digs down into the west. That will coax a strong onshore flow here in Southern California, and we'll see a little bit of wet weather. We go to our future radar, and we'll take you through the day. You can see how the showers will be developing. They'll be mostly on the light side, and as that moisture moves up to the mountains, the higher mountains will see some snow. Forecast highs only 61 in Oceanside, 62 in San Diego. We'll keep it in the 50s. Escondido, Ramona, Double Nichols, Borrego Springs at 67, around 50 in Campo. Friday, that system slips its way to the east, and we'll see some improving weather here. So as we go to our extended forecast, well, it's quite cool here Thursday into Friday. But just in time for the weekend, the sun's back. The temperatures will rise to low 70s on Sunday. Inland sections, some rain will be around, perhaps a shower to Friday. And then the warm-up, look at that, 80s on Sunday. Into the mountains, very windy, rain and higher terrain snow. And then over the weekend, sunshine, temperatures on the rise Sunday And in the deserts, well, it'll be a little bit cool for the end of the week, but look at the weekend. It's going to be sunny and warmer. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
SeaWorld is now allowing visitors to return to its indoor animal exhibits, and that's not all. The park also plans to offer nightly fireworks later this week, and that's the first time in more than a year. Come April 1st, large theme parks will be permitted to reopen, including their rides, although at much reduced capacities. SeaWorld, which is operating under a reservation system, is not announcing yet when it will move to reopen its coasters and other thrill rides. Good news for people who like to see movies on the big screen. Regal Cinemas is reopening its U.S. theaters next month, about half a year after they were shut down. 8 here in San Diego County will open on April 2nd. SeaWorld Group, Regal's parent company, says they will be able to make a profit once capacity restrictions expand to at least 50%. A very touching moment played out in Chula Vista involving a couple married for 72 years. Because of the pandemic, Francis and Roberta Dorian have not been able to visit in person for a year, but finally, after both got vaccinated, that long-awaited embrace finally took place.
So I can be with her, next to her, I think the more memory I can bring her up. Yeah, because she's losing her memory more often because I'm not there.
Due to her health, Roberta had been staying in a care facility, so the couple relied on daily phone calls and video chats until now. Francis says he's looking forward to the day when they can spend all day, every day, together. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.